The red sun of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the mining site. Daeho Kim wiped sweat from his face as he watched the human workers move slowly between the massive drilling machines. Their backs were bent from years of hard work. Their faces showed the same tired look that all humans had these days. It had been 100 years since the Vorthak came. 100 years since everything changed. Daeho remembered the stories his grandfather told him. Stories about when humans lived free on their own worlds, when they built their own cities and made their own choices. But those were just stories now. Old tales that seemed like dreams. The Vorthak were 9 feet tall with thick gray skin that looked like armor. They had sharp teeth and claws that could cut through metal. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dark. When they spoke, their voices sounded like rocks grinding together. They were faster and stronger than any human could ever be. The first time humans met the Vorthak, they tried to fight. Human ships fired their best weapons at the Vorthak fleet. The weapons bounced off like raindrops. The Vorthak ships destroyed entire human fleets in minutes. Cities burned. Millions died. The war lasted only 3 months. After that, humans learned their place. They were workers now, servants, property. Daeho looked up as heavy footsteps shook the ground. 3 Vorthak guards walked toward the mining site. Their black armor gleamed in the red sunlight. Energy weapons hung from their belts. The middle guard was bigger than the others. Gold markings on his armor showed he was a noble. The workers stopped what they were doing. They kept their eyes down. Looking at a Vorthak was dangerous. Looking at a noble could get you killed. Human foreman, the noble called out in his grinding voice. Come here. Daeho walked over slowly. He kept his head down. Yes, Lord Kretch. How can I serve you? The mining output is down by 2% this week, Kretch said. His yellow eyes burned with anger. Explain this failure. The equipment is old, my lord, Daeho said carefully. We need new parts for the drills. The workers are doing their best. Kretch made a sound like a growl. Humans always make excuses. You are weak, lazy, this is why you serve us. Daeho said nothing. There was nothing safe to say. Where is your daughter? Kretch asked suddenly. Daeho's heart stopped. My daughter, my lord? The young female who operates the communications array. I have been watching her. She has interesting qualities. Fear ran through Daeho like ice water. Mi Young was only 19. She was smart and kind and everything good in his world. She is working at the communication station, my lord. Bring her to me, Kretch ordered. My lord, she is needed at her post. Bring her to me now. Daeho's hands shook as he used his communicator. Mi Young, please come to Mining Site 7. The Lord requires your presence. Minutes later, Mi Young arrived. She was small even for a human, with dark hair tied back for work. She wore the gray coveralls that all human workers wore. Her eyes were bright with intelligence. She kept her head down as she approached. You sent for me, father? Kretch looked at her like a hunter looking at prey. Look at me, human female. My lord, Daeho said quickly. She does not know. I said look at me. Mi Young slowly raised her head. Her dark eyes met Kretch's yellow ones for just a moment. It was barely a second, but it was enough. Kretch roared with rage. Insolent creature! You dare look upon your betters? Please, my lord, Daeho begged. She meant no disrespect. She is young. Silence. Kretch pulled his energy weapon from his belt. The other guards stepped back. They knew what was coming. Mi Young looked at her father. There was no fear in her eyes, only sadness. I love you, father, she said quietly. The energy blast lit up the mining site like lightning. Mi Young fell to the ground. She did not move again. Daeho dropped to his knees beside his daughter. Her eyes stared at nothing. The smell of burned flesh filled the air. The other workers stood frozen in horror. Let this be a lesson, Kretch announced to everyone. Humans who forget their place will die. Their families will watch. This is the price of defiance. The guards walked away, laughing among themselves. They talked about where they would eat dinner. They had already forgotten about the girl they had just killed. Daeho held his daughter's body and cried. The tears fell on her gray coveralls. They mixed with the dust from the mining site. Around him, the other workers slowly went back to their jobs. They had learned long ago that stopping work only brought more punishment. But something was different now. Something had broken inside Daeho. For the first time in 40 years, he felt something other than fear and sadness. He felt anger. Real anger. The kind that burned hot and would not go away. He looked at the heavy mining tool in his hand. It was made for breaking rocks, for digging through the hardest stone. He looked at the spot where Kretch had stood just minutes before. They bleed, he whispered to himself. I have seen them bleed, it was true. During work accidents, when Vorthak guards got hurt, they bled red blood just like humans. They felt pain. They could be wounded. They could die. As the red sun set behind the mountains, Deho made a promise to his daughter's body. The Vorthak called themselves the Alpha species, the master race, the pinnacle of evolution. They said humans were weak and worthless, but they were wrong about one thing. They thought humans were broken. They thought 100 years of slavery had destroyed the human spirit forever. They had never met a father who had lost everything. Deho stood up slowly. He looked around the mining site. The workers were watching him from the corners of their eyes. They had seen something change in him. Something dangerous. For the first time in a century, a human was truly angry. The Vorthak had made a mistake. They had pushed too far. They had forgotten that even the weakest creature could become deadly when it had nothing left to lose. The revolution would not start with armies or weapons or grand speeches. It would start with one man, one tool, and one moment of pure human rage. The Alpha species was about to learn what happened when they made humans truly angry. 3 days after Mi Young's death, Deho walked into the equipment storage shed. His mining tool felt heavy in his hands. The weight of it reminded him of what he was about to do. Kretch was there, just as Deho knew he would be. The Vorthak noble came to the shed every third day to inspect the mining equipment. He always came alone. He thought humans were too weak and broken to be dangerous. He was wrong. Human foreman, Kretch said without looking up from a damaged drill. This equipment is in poor condition. Your workers are careless. Yes, my lord, Deho said. He stepped closer. The mining tool felt warm in his grip. Kretch turned around. His yellow eyes looked at Deho with the same cold indifference he had shown Mi Young. Your daughter learned an important lesson about respect. I hope you learned it too. That was when Deho struck. The mining tool smashed into Kretch's head with all the force that 40 years of anger could provide. The Vorthak's thick skull cracked like an egg. Yellow blood splattered across the storage shed walls. Kretch fell backward, his eyes wide with shock. He tried to reach for his weapon, but Deho hit him again, and again, until the great Lord Kretch, member of the master race, lay still in a pool of his own blood. Deho stood over the body, breathing hard. His hands shook. In one moment, he had done something that no human had attempted in decades. He had killed a Vorthak, and he was still alive. Deho dragged the body behind some old equipment where it would not be found right away. Then he went back to work as if nothing had happened. But inside, everything had changed. That evening, Deho went to see Heejin Park. She worked in the communications center, managing the data networks that connected all the human workers. She was smart and careful and knew how to keep secrets. I need your help, Deho told her quietly. Heejin looked around to make sure no one was listening.
What kind of help?
The kind that could get us both killed. Heejin studied his face. She saw something different there, something she had not seen in any human for a very long time. Tell me, she said. Deho told her about Kretch, about the mining tool, about the yellow blood on the shed floor. Heejin listened without saying a word. They can die, Deho finished. They bleed and hurt and die just like us. The workers need to know this. Heejin was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. I can send messages through the maintenance channels. Short bursts that look like system updates. The Vorthak never pay attention to those. What will you tell them? The truth. They bleed, they die. They are not gods. The message went out that night. It was only a few words, but it spread from one human colony to another like wildfire. Workers whispered it in the mines. Servants repeated it in the great houses. Children heard it from their parents and remembered. They bleed, they die. They are not gods. On a transport ship between star systems, Taemin Lee received the message. He had been a military officer before the conquest, back when humans still had armies. For 20 years he had been planning and waiting and building a network of people who remembered the old days. The message was the signal. He had been waiting for it. Taemin began sending out his own messages to old contacts scattered across 12 worlds. Former soldiers who now worked as mechanics and farmers and janitors. People who still knew how to fight even if they had not picked up a weapon in decades. The messages were simple. The time has come. Remember your training. Pass it on. On the factory world of Kepler 452b, So-Young Choi read the message while she fixed a broken assembly line. She was an engineer who had learned to make incredible things out of spare parts and industrial waste. Her workshop was full of devices that the Vorthak had never bothered to understand. So-Young looked at the chemical tanks around her factory. She looked at the metal pipes and electrical systems. Her mind began to work on new problems. Different problems. How to turn factory equipment into weapons. How to make explosives from cleaning supplies. How to build tools that could hurt creatures with armored skin. On the agricultural colony of Proxima Centauri C, Hyun-Woo Nam was loading grain shipments when his communicator buzzed with the message. He had been a pilot once, flying cargo ships between the colonies. The Vorthak had taken his ship but let him keep working as a freight handler. They thought humans were too simple to cause trouble with vehicles. They were wrong about that too. Hyun-Woo knew every cargo ship on the planet. He knew their schedules and their routes and their weaknesses. He also knew which human workers could still remember how to fly. The first meeting happened on Kepler 442b, in an abandoned mining tunnel deep underground. Daeho waited in the darkness, wondering if anyone would come. He heard footsteps in the tunnel and reached for his mining tool. "Easy, friend," said a voice. "We are here to talk." A dozen humans emerged from the shadows. Men and women with hard faces and steady eyes. People who had lost everything but had not given up. "You started something," said Jin A-Song, a woman who had been a teacher before becoming a factory supervisor. "The message is spreading to every human world." "Good," Daeho said. "It is time they knew the truth." "Knowing is not enough," said Woo Jin Kang, a maintenance worker who had once written speeches for human politicians. "We need to act." "Act how?" asked another voice. "They have ships and weapons and armies. We have tools and anger." "Tools can become weapons," So-Young said from the back of the group. "Anger can become courage. And we have something they do not have." "What?" "Each other. They rule by keeping us separated and afraid, but fear works both ways." Over the following weeks, small groups began forming on every human world. They met in secret places, maintenance tunnels, abandoned buildings, deep caves. They shared information and made plans. The plans were simple at first. How to disable Vorthak equipment without getting caught. How to slow down production without triggering punishment. How to move information between colonies without using official channels. But slowly, the plans grew bolder. Hyun-Woo began teaching other humans how to sabotage cargo ships. Small problems that would look like accidents. Delayed shipments. Lost supplies. Nothing obvious enough to cause investigations. So-Young started building her first real weapons. Devices that looked like normal tools but could punch through Vorthak armor. Chemicals that could blind their sensitive eyes. Sound generators that could hurt their ears. Jin-A began training people in her old profession, teaching. But instead of math and history, she taught tactics and strategy. How to move without being seen. How to strike quickly and disappear. How to think like soldiers instead of slaves. The Vorthak noticed that things were going wrong more often. Equipment failed. Schedules were missed. Humans seemed clumsier and less efficient than usual, but they did not suspect organized resistance. Humans had been broken for too long. A few accidents and mistakes were normal. The alpha species was too confident to imagine that their slaves might be fighting back. That confidence was about to become their greatest weakness. Late at night, in the tunnels beneath the mining colony, Daeho looked at the faces around him. A month ago, these people had been hopeless, defeated, ready to accept slavery forever. Now they looked like something the Vorthak had never seen before. They looked like humans who remembered how to be dangerous. "Tomorrow we hit the supply depot," Taemin said quietly. "Just a small strike. Take some weapons. Show them we can hurt them." Daeho nodded. He thought about Mi-young and the promise he had made to her memory. The Vorthak thought they were the alpha species. Masters of the universe. They were about to learn that humans had a different definition of evolution. Survival was not about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about being the most adaptable, and humans were very good at adapting to new situations. The supply depot attack changed everything. Taemin led 12 humans through the maintenance tunnels beneath the Vorthak outpost. They moved like shadows, using skills that most of them had not practiced in 20 years. So-Young had given each of them one of her improvised weapons, devices that looked like repair tools but could fire explosive charges. The attack lasted only 4 minutes. The humans struck fast, took what they could carry, and vanished back into the tunnels before the Vorthak guards knew what happened. 3 guards died. 20 energy weapons disappeared along with medical supplies and communication equipment. But the real victory was not the weapons they took. It was the look of shock on the surviving guards' faces. For the first time in a century, Vorthak had been successfully attacked by humans. War Commander Grenth arrived on Kepler 442b 3 days later. He was bigger than most Vorthak, with scars across his armored hide that showed he had survived many battles. His ship carried 500 elite troops. "Gather all the humans in the main square," he ordered the local garrison. "I will show them the cost of defiance." 10,000 humans were forced to stand in the square under the hot red sun. Grenth stood on a platform where everyone could see him. His voice boomed across the crowd. "3 of my soldiers are dead," he announced, "killed by human criminals. This cannot be allowed." He pointed to a group of human workers standing near the front. You, and you. Step forward." The 3 humans, a young man, an elderly woman, and a maintenance worker, looked terrified as Vorthak guards pushed them onto the platform. "I do not know if these humans were involved in the attack," Grenth said. "But that does not matter. For every Vorthak killed, 100 humans will die." "This is the law!" the crowd gasped. Even the Vorthak had never been this cruel before. Grenth raised his weapon. "Let this be a lesson that you will never forget." That was when Deho stepped out of the crowd. "Stop," he called out. All eyes turned to him. The Vorthak guards reached for their weapons. "You want the humans who killed your soldiers?" Deho said, walking toward the platform. "Here I am. I killed Kretch with my own hands. These people had nothing to do with it." Grenth stared at him in disbelief. You killed Lord Kretch?" "With a mining tool," Deho said calmly. "He bled yellow blood all over the storage shed floor. Want to see where I buried his body?" For a moment there was complete silence in the square. Then Grenth began to laugh. It was a harsh, grinding sound that made the humans flinch. "One human thinks he can challenge the Vorthak Empire," Grenth said. "Very well. You will die slowly. The others will watch and learn." But as Grenth raised his weapon, chaos erupted in the square. So Young's explosive devices went off all around the platform. Smoke and fire filled the air. Hidden resistance fighters opened fire from the buildings around the square. The carefully planned execution became a battle. In the confusion, Tae-min and his team attacked the Vorthak ship. They had been waiting for this moment, when most of the guards would be in the square. Hyunwoo used his knowledge of ship systems to disable the engines, while the others fought their way to the weapons storage. The battle lasted 2 hours. When it was over, 50 Vorthak were dead, including War Commander Grenth himself. The humans had lost 30 people, but they had won their first real victory. More importantly, they had captured Vorthak weapons, armor, and communication equipment. For the first time, humans had the tools they needed to fight back properly. News of the victory spread faster than the Vorthak could stop it. Hyojin had built a secret communication network that connected every human colony. The message was simple but powerful. "We won. They can be beaten." On the industrial world of Kepler 438b, Jin Song received the message while teaching a group of factory workers how to make improvised explosives. She smiled as she read it, then looked at her students. "Class dismissed," she said. "Time for field practice." That night, Jin led an attack on the Vorthak Administrative Center. They used the ventilation systems to move through the building. Humans were much smaller than Vorthak and could fit through spaces that the aliens could not. By morning, the center was destroyed and its records scattered. On the transport hub of Wolf 359, Wu Jin Kang began his own kind of warfare. He had learned that Vorthak society was very rigid. They followed strict rules about rank and authority. Wu Jin started spreading false messages through their communication systems. He sent orders that seemed to come from high-ranking commanders. Orders that contradicted each other. Orders that sent troops to the wrong places or made them suspicious of their own officers. The Vorthak chain of command began to break down as they could not tell which orders were real. Meanwhile, young humans who had grown up under Vorthak rule began to discover talents their parents had never imagined. Sehyun Lim was only 25, but he had a gift for moving silently and striking without warning. He began hunting individual Vorthak guards, taking them down one by one in dark alleys and empty corridors. Yoon Ji-yu was a medical worker who had studied Vorthak biology while treating their injuries. She discovered that their thick skin was sensitive to certain frequencies of sound. She built sonic weapons that could disorient or even kill Vorthak by hitting them with the right vibrations. Minho Park, Hyjin's younger brother, was a computer specialist who had been maintaining Vorthak data systems for years. He knew their technology better than most Vorthak did. He began introducing viruses and system failures that crippled their equipment at crucial moments. The attack spread to every human world. Small strikes at first, then larger ones as the resistance gained experience and confidence. The Vorthak found themselves fighting an enemy they could not understand. Humans did not fight the way other species fought. They did not meet the Vorthak in open battle where superior strength and weapons would give the aliens an advantage. Instead, they struck from shadows and vanished like smoke. They turned the Vorthak's own technology against them. They used the environment itself as a weapon. On the desert world of Kepler 186f, humans led Vorthak patrols into sandstorms where their superior eyesight meant nothing. On the ice moon of Europa, they used the cold to slow down Vorthak movements while humans, better adapted to extreme conditions, moved freely. The Vorthak had ruled by fear for a century, but now that fear was turning around. Vorthak soldiers began to look over their shoulders. They jumped at shadows. They requested transfers away from human worlds. For the first time in their history, the Alpha species was afraid. Young Su Han led the most daring attack yet on the orbital station above Proxima Centauri b. Using cargo ships that Hyun Woo had taught him to pilot, Young Su and his team approached the station disguised as a supply convoy. Once they were inside, they used So Young's explosives to destroy the station's main power core. The explosion lit up the night sky on every world in the system. It was a signal that could be seen across space. Humans were no longer hiding. Back on Kepler 442b, Daeho stood in the same square where Grenth had tried to execute innocent people. But now it was filled with armed humans planning their next strike. The mining tools had been replaced with real weapons. The faces that had once shown only despair now burned with determination. They called us weak, Daeho said to the crowd. They said we were broken. They thought 100 years of slavery had destroyed us. He held up one of the captured Vorthak weapons. But we are still here. We are still fighting, and we are winning. The crowd roared its approval. These were not the same humans who had bent their backs and lowered their eyes. These were warriors who had remembered how to fight. The Alpha species was about to learn that evolution was not about being the strongest. It was about being the most adaptable. And humans had been adapting to hostile environments for millions of years. The Vorthak had forgotten that when you back a species into a corner, you had better make sure you can handle what comes out fighting. The Vorthak Empire was afraid, and fear made them dangerous. Supreme War Leader Thakresh stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the reports pour in from across human space. 12 colony worlds in open rebellion, 47 outposts destroyed, over 2,000 Vorthak soldiers dead. In 3 months, humans had undone a century of careful control. Impossible, Thakresh growled, his yellow eyes burning with rage. They are insects, parasites. How can they resist the master race? His aide, Commander Vex, trembled as he delivered the latest report. War Leader, we have lost contact with the mining station on Kepler 442b. Long-range sensors show the entire facility is dark. Thakresh slammed his massive fist onto the control panel, crushing it. Bring me the Imperial fleet, every ship, every soldier. If humans want to die, we will give them what they want. All of them, War Leader. That is over 10,000 ships, all of them. The Kresh roared. We will burn every human world to ash. Every man, woman, and child will die. The human infestation ends now. But on those human worlds, something remarkable was happening. The resistance was evolving just as fast as the Vorthak tried to crush it. Se-Hyun Lim crouched in the ventilation system above a Vorthak command post, listening to their communications. He had been hunting commanders for weeks now, learning their habits and routines. But tonight was different. Tonight he was hunting the biggest prize of all, General Korvac, military governor of the Kepler system. Se-Hyun had discovered that Vorthak commanders followed strict patterns. They were predictable in ways that humans never were. Korvac always inspected the armory at exactly midnight. He always walked the same route. He always came alone because his pride would not let him show fear. That pride was about to kill him. Sehun dropped silently from the ceiling as Korvac passed underneath. His blade, one of So Young's newest designs, slipped between the armor plates and found the soft spot at the base of the general's skull. Korvac died without making a sound, but Sehun did not run away like he usually did. Instead, he dragged the body to Korvac's own office and sat it in the command chair. Then he activated the general's communication system and sent a message to every Vorthak unit in the system. The message was just a picture of Korvac's dead body, with human writing carved into his armor. The hunters have become the hunted. Across the system, Vorthak soldiers received the message and realized that nowhere was safe. Their greatest general had been killed in his own command center. If Korvac could die, anyone could die. Meanwhile, Minho Park was achieving something even more dangerous. He had been studying captured Vorthak technology for months, taking apart their weapons and computers and communication systems, but instead of just copying their designs, he was improving them. Human creativity was something the Vorthak could not understand. They built things to follow exact specifications. Humans built things to solve problems in new ways. Minho's workshop had become a laboratory where human imagination met alien technology. His new weapons were lighter and more efficient than anything the Vorthak had. His communication devices could not be jammed by Vorthak systems. His armor was flexible where Vorthak armor was rigid. "We are not trying to become them," Minho explained to his team of engineers. "We are trying to become better than them." The breakthrough came when Unji Yu brought him a complete scan of Vorthak biology. She had been studying their weaknesses for months, dissecting bodies from the battlefield and analyzing their nervous systems. "Their brains process information differently than ours," she explained. "They think in straight lines. Cause and effect. If this, then that. They cannot handle chaos or unpredictability." Minho smiled as he understood. "So we give them chaos." The new human weapons were designed not just to kill, but to confuse. They fired in random patterns that Vorthak reflexes could not predict. They made sounds that disrupted Vorthak hearing. They created light flashes that overloaded their sensitive eyes. When the weapons were tested in battle, the results were devastating. Vorthak soldiers who had dominated battlefields for centuries suddenly found themselves helpless against enemies they could not anticipate or counter. On the agricultural world of Taoseti A, Na Yun-shin was working on an even more ambitious project. She was a quantum physicist who had been forced to work as a farm supervisor, but the resistance had given her access to a laboratory again. Na-yun had been studying the Vorthak's greatest weapon, their planet-killer ships that could destroy entire worlds with focused energy beams. The physics behind the weapons was incredibly complex, but Na-yun understood something that the Vorthak did not. The weapons could be reversed. Instead of projecting energy outward to destroy a planet, she explained to Taemin during a secret meeting, "We can turn the energy inward, make the ship destroy itself." "How?" "We need to capture one of their dreadnoughts, get inside the weapon system, change the targeting parameters." Taemin stared at her. "You want to steal a ship the size of a city? That carries 10,000 soldiers?" "Not steal," Na-yun said calmly. "Infiltrate, sabotage, and then use their own ultimate weapon against their homeworld." It was an insane plan. Suicidal. Impossible. It was exactly the kind of plan that humans were good at. But first, they had to survive what was coming. The Imperial fleet was already on its way, the largest military force the Vorthak had ever assembled. 10,000 ships carrying over 1,000,000 soldiers, enough firepower to crack planets. Young Su-han stood on the bridge of a captured Vorthak cruiser, looking at the tactical display. The approaching fleet was so massive it looked like a moving constellation in space. "They are not coming to conquer this time," he said to his officers, all humans who had learned to operate alien technology through trial and error. "They are coming to exterminate. Can we stop them?" asked his tactical officer, a former factory worker named Ji-won. Young Su thought about all the impossible things humans had accomplished in the past 6 months. They had gone from slaves to warriors, from victims to hunters, from the weakest species in known space to the greatest threat the Vorthak Empire had ever faced. "Maybe not," he said, "but we can make them pay such a price that they will wish they had never heard of humanity." The final battle was about to begin. On one side, the most powerful military force in the galaxy, the Alpha species with their superior technology and overwhelming numbers. On the other side, humans who had learned that being the strongest was not the same as being the smartest, or the most determined, or the most willing to sacrifice everything for freedom. The Vorthak still thought this was a war they could win through superior force. They still believed that their advanced weapons and disciplined armies would crush the human rebellion just as they had crushed every other enemy. They had not yet learned that humans did not fight wars the way other species did. They did not follow the rules. They did not accept limitations. And they never ever gave up. In a few hours, the Imperial fleet would arrive at Earth. The homeworld of humanity would face the fury of the Alpha species. But the Alpha species was about to discover that cornering humans on their homeworld was not victory. It was the biggest mistake they had ever made. The Imperial fleet arrived at Earth like a storm of metal and death. 10,000 Vorthak ships spread across the solar system, blotting out the stars. Supreme War Leader Thakresh stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Dominion, and looked down at the blue-green world that had caused him so much trouble. "Begin orbital bombardment," he ordered. "I want every human city reduced to ash." But as the first wave of energy beams lanced down toward Earth's surface, something unexpected happened. The beams struck invisible barriers and scattered harmlessly into space. "Shields," reported Commander Vex in disbelief. "The entire planet is protected by shield generators." Takresh's eyes blazed with fury. "Impossible. Humans do not have that technology. They do now." War Leader. In hidden bunkers across Earth, Minho Park's engineering teams monitored the shield generators they had built using captured Vorthak technology. But these were not copies of alien designs. They were human improvements, more efficient, more adaptable, and powered by Earth's own magnetic field. "Shields holding at 98%, reported one of the technicians. "The planet is safe for now." But Minho knew the shields could not hold forever. The Imperial fleet had enough firepower to eventually break through any defense. The real battle would have to be fought in space. That was where Deho and the suicide mission came in. 50 volunteers had gathered in a stolen Vorthak transport ship hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon. They were led by Deho Kim, the mining foreman who had started the rebellion by killing a Vorthak noble with a tool. With him were Taemin Lee, So-Young Choi, and 47 other humans who had volunteered to die for their species. Their target was the Dominion itself, Takresh's flagship, and the most powerful ship in the Vorthak fleet. "Remember," Nayun Shin told them over the communication system, "you need to reach the weapon control center in the ship's core. Change the targeting parameters like I showed you. Point the planet killer weapon at the Vorthak homeworld coordinates." "How long do we have?" asked Taemin. "The quantum tunnel will take 8 minutes to establish a connection to their homeworld. After that, one shot from their own weapon will destroy their entire civilization." Deho looked at his team. They were ordinary humans, workers and teachers and engineers who had never been soldiers. But the past year had changed them. They had learned to fight. They had learned to be dangerous. "Any of you want to change your minds?" he asked. "This is a one-way trip." No one spoke. They had all lost too much to the Vorthak. Family members killed for sport. Friends executed for small acts of defiance. Entire lives wasted in slavery. "Then let us go teach the Alpha species about evolution," Deho said. The transport ship accelerated toward the Imperial fleet, broadcasting Vorthak identification codes that So-Young had extracted from captured computers. To the fleet sensors, it looked like a routine supply run. But as they approached the Dominion, the largest ship in the fleet, alarms began to sound. Someone had noticed that the transport was off course. "Energy weapons charging," reported the pilot. "They know something is wrong." "Ramming speed," Deho ordered. The transport ship smashed into the Dominion's docking bay at full velocity. The impact tore through armor plating and sent shockwaves through the massive vessel. Emergency lights flickered as the ship's systems tried to cope with the damage. Deho and his team poured out of the wreckage, armed with the most advanced weapons human ingenuity could create. Vorthak soldiers rushed to meet them, but they were not prepared for the fury that 40 years of oppression had created. The battle through the ship's corridors was brutal and desperate. The humans fought like wild animals, using their smaller size to move through ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels. They struck from unexpected angles and disappeared before the Vorthak could respond. So Young's explosives cleared a path through heavily defended sections. Taemin's military training kept the team moving toward their objective, and Daeho's rage drove them forward when exhaustion threatened to stop them. One by one, the volunteers fell, cut down by energy weapons or overwhelmed by superior numbers. But each death bought time for the others to advance deeper into the ship. By the time they reached the weapon control center, only 12 humans were left alive. "I need 5 minutes," Daeho said as he connected Naun's quantum device to the Vorthak targeting system. "Keep them off me." The remaining humans formed a defensive circle around him, firing at every Vorthak soldier who tried to enter the chamber. Their weapons, human improvements on alien designs, cut through Vorthak armor like paper. But there were too many enemies. The circle grew smaller as more humans fell. 4 minutes, Daeho called out. Taemin took an energy blast to the chest but kept firing until his weapon ran out of power. So Young used her last explosive charge to collapse the main entrance, buying them precious seconds. 3 minutes. Now only 6 humans were left. They fell back to the control console itself using the Vorthak machinery as cover. 2 minutes, 3 humans left. Then 2. Then only Daeho working frantically with the targeting system while energy blasts scorched the air around him. 1 minute. The last human defender fell. Vorthak soldiers poured into the chamber, their weapons aimed at Daeho's back. "Stop," roared Supreme War Leader Thakresh as he entered the room. "I want to kill this insect myself." Daeho turned around slowly, his hand still on the control interface. Blood ran down his face from a dozen wounds, but his eyes burned with the same determination they had shown when he first struck back against his oppressors. "You should have left us alone," he said simply. "You cost me an empire," Thakresh snarled. "You made me look weak in front of my own people. For that you will die slowly." "Maybe," Daeho said, "but you will die first." He pressed the final control. 8 light years away, the Vorthak homeworld was a center of celebration. News of the Imperial fleet's attack on Earth had reached them, and the population was confident that the human problem would finally be solved. They never saw the quantum tunnel that opened in their upper atmosphere. They never had time to understand what was happening when their own planet-killer weapon fired through space and time to strike their world. The energy beam that was meant to destroy Earth instead turned the Vorthak homeworld into a cloud of radioactive gas in less than a second. 50 billion Vorthak died instantly, including their government, their military command, and their entire ruling class. On the Dominion, Thakresh felt his homeworld die through the psychic connection that all Vorthak shared with their birthplace. The knowledge hit him like a physical blow, dropping him to his knees. "Impossible," he whispered. You would not. "We learned from you," Daeho said as Vorthak soldiers stood frozen in shock around him. "You taught us that sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to hit back harder than they can imagine." Across the Imperial fleet, 10,000 ships received the news simultaneously. Their homeworld was gone. Their civilization was finished. Everything they had fought for was ash and radiation. Some ships tried to continue the attack on Earth, but their crews were too stunned to fight effectively. Others simply powered down their weapons and surrendered. Many more fled into deep space, carrying the survivors of a broken empire to uncertain exile. The war was over. Humanity had won, but the victory came at a terrible price. Daeho and all 49 volunteers died in the weapon control center, cut down by Vorthak soldiers in the moments after they saved their species. 5 years later, President Hyjin Park stood in the memorial garden on Earth, where statues honored the heroes of the rebellion. The statue of Daeho Kim showed him holding a mining tool in one hand and a quantum device in the other, symbols of how humanity had evolved from slaves to liberators. They called themselves the Alpha Species, she said to the crowd, gathered for the anniversary. They believed that strength and size made them superior to everyone else. They forgot that evolution is not about being the biggest predator. It is about adapting to change. In the years since the war, humanity had spread beyond their original 12 worlds. They had made contact with dozens of other species that had been enslaved or threatened by the Vorthak Empire. Many of those species had joined the new Human Federation, not as subjects, but as equals. Admiral Young Soo Han commanded a fleet of ships that protected trade routes and helped rebuild worlds devastated by Vorthak occupation. His vessels used human technology that was more advanced than anything the superior aliens had ever developed. Dr. Yoon-ji Yu led scientific expeditions that studied the ruins of the Vorthak homeworld, learning about the civilization that had once ruled through fear. Her research showed that the Vorthak themselves had been slaves millions of years ago, conquered by an even more powerful species that had long since vanished. The cycle of oppression, she wrote in her report, can only be broken by those who choose to be better than their oppressors. The surviving Vorthak lived scattered across the galaxy, no longer masters, but refugees. Some had learned to work peacefully with other species. Others remained bitter and dangerous, dreaming of revenge that would never come. But they all shared one memory that would haunt them forever: the knowledge that the species they had considered weakest had proven stronger than they could imagine.